Good morning, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun. I stopped this video by accident. I'm looking at China. It's a continuation of the previous video, and I'm linking it to the cost of living prices to show that China is a normal country under globalization, doing the same thing being done across the rest of the continents, including in Asia, Africa, and Europe, as well as the Americas. So is to I'm doing a review of a material to demonstrate that these changes are a normal part of modern society, and they are also arguing that the cost of living is created by poverty. Poverty affects people who are not multimillionaires and multimillionaires. If you're not a multimillionaire, you are poor. This is something I've been saying over again and again, and using the cost of living as a topic to discuss the question of peace in the world, because peace is the most important objective in the world. When we combine our culture and our development, we can achieve peace. Development is doing well, in my opinion. Culture is not doing very well. We need to begin to start valuing humanity a bit more than valuing wealth and power, and which is now what we are doing, and that's why we are actually disrespecting the sanctity of life. And fight is so easy for us now to fight and kill so many people, and this is something we have done historically. If you look at this video about China and link it with the rest of the video I have been recording, you will find that there have been a lot of wars, and the cost of living crisis is just one of those crises which have been happening through history. And it's also a form of war where the capitalism is concentrating wealth in the hands of few and taking away wealth from the many, and this can be corrected developmentally from by strengthening the public sector and targeting policies on poverty reduction or even alleviation. And this is something important. It's a stepping stone toward the direction of peace. And failing to do that will lead to more chaos. And if we cannot take people out of poverty now, when there's a lot of wealth in the world, then we will be making a major mistake and undermining peace. And that is actually on the front of development. On the front of culture, we need to use educational system to rewrite how we learn, to actually teach our families, communities, and institutions respect for humanity. And if we develop those value formulation in our communities, in integrating it in our lives, then we begin to treat the individual with dignity, with decency, including people who have wealth, sharing some of their wealth with those who are less fortunate. And I'm talking about poverty eradication. I'm not talking about the majority of the population accessing wealth, because under the system of capitalism, practically this is impossible until the system of rule ends. I don't know when rule is going to stop. It will only stop with ultimate enlightenment of humanity. As long as humanity still believes it is necessary for a certain group of people to rule over other people, inequality will be necessary for the ruling class to oppress the working class, or people who are, I would say, the people who are ruled over. You can call them slaves if you want, because these people are actually supposed to do what they are told. If you see today's society, people who are taken into courts, into prison, are mostly poor people, people who are actually forced into joining the military or even fighting in wars, forced directly or indirectly, because they need livelihood. They are working in industry, doing jobs which they don't want to do, but they are forced to do that. That is a form of slavery. And this is happening because it is necessary to rule over one is a small group of people to rule over the majority. As long as rule as a system in terms of governance, whether it's private or public. When I say private government, people may not really understand. Big business is actually a form of private government. Big NGOs, non-governmental organizations, charities are actually private government. Public government is actually what we know, which is actually to do with the state, the politicians we elect, and the ministers we appoint through parliament. What we know is the public sector, governmental system. But the private government is actually the result of privatization or big businesses of the economy to be owned by big businesses, big corporations. That is what private government means. That means private individuals are going to buy the countries, buy the continent, buy the world, to rule over those who don't have wealth. If you cannot own something, you won't have power. The only way to rule over somebody else is to have power. That is the fundamentals of politics and government, of course. And if that, for some reason, people find it necessary to rule over one another, they feel normally, because like I said, if the system of rule still exists, see, society cannot exist if many people are in power, because the system will be unstable. You see, the system of rule needs stability, and because you find security in stability. That means the few at the top, the majority at the bottom, and that will not change. The only way that will change is when the system collapses, with everything going up and come down. System of rule, which is current. Capitalism is a system of rule because capitalism is the system left now running, which means wealth is now the weapon we use to access power with which to rule the world. Whoever has money and wealth is the new ruler, and the master also, who enslaves other people. System of injustice and violence. As long as there are a few individuals ruling over the many, there will never be peace. There will always be war, there will be killing, there will be destruction. Actually, if it doesn't stop, humanity will go extinct, because nothing will correct society until the system of rule stops. And when the system of rule stops, meaning the people who are now ruling over the many stop ruling over the many, and their motive is more complicated than meets the eye, because we may think it is they want to control wealth. Yes, that's what they want to do, and use wealth to oppress the many, to enslave them. That is the main purpose. But also they want they enjoy rule. They find that ruling over other people makes them happy. But if they develop new sets of value where they find happiness in something else, then there will be no incentive to be in power, to rule, to use power to rule over other people, which is the most complex aspect of rule, of power and rule. People desiring to rule over other people because it makes them happy. It's a form of perversion. you have to be perverted to get happiness by enslaving other people. You enslave the rest of the world, and as a coalition of rulers who are actually normally 5 or 10%, because any more than that, the system will collapse, and they will stop ruling over people, and there is going to be a lot of chaos. Because you see, we have developed as a society with the system of rule. If the system of rule collapses now, it's like treating cancer. If you try to destroy cancer, which is what rule is a form of, it's a blight on society, it's a form of cancer. It's a disease, which if you try to destroy system of rule, it is the same as committing suicide. You're going to destroy society. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is actually treat it. You need to treat it with things like policies, like public policy, to mitigate the incidence of poverty. But the problem with public policy and eradicating poverty is that there are more and more. I mean, population growth is a real threat to the ruling class, and therefore, any threat to the ruling class is a threat to the working class. Let us put it that way. That the slaves are the working class, because the ruling class don't work. They make our slaves work for them. That's why slavery, if you work for a living, you are actually a slave. And if you're a multimillionaire and a multi-billionaire, you work to amuse yourself necessarily, because you don't need to work for a living. Then you're a master. So we need less masters for society to be stabilized. That is actually how to achieve security. To make society secure, to save even slaves from themselves, is to keep them out of power. Because you see, that is why I say the system is evil, and people need to understand this as the reality. People who manage society need to deliberately keep the majority out of wealth, because if they access wealth, they're going to access power and cause instability in society. We don't need that. Instability is going to create. We need the police and the military to oppress the majority of the population, to force them to be orderly. We cannot rule by consent. Consent is to make us, the idea of consent is to make us feel good about life. Is to maintain artificial peace. This peace is artificial because there will come a time when, especially if slaves increase in number, slaves who are actually the working class, the majority, 90%, normally that is the critical figure. And going forward, because the population proportionately expanding, this is going to create a lot of problems. The more people increase, the more they are going to, we need less people to maintain rule. See, the only reason we need less slaves, because we need to maintain a system of rule until perhaps we learn peace. I don't know how we're going to do that, but I believe that people can learn something. People can learn to be peaceful. Perhaps that is the only hope we have. Our capacity to learn peace, to learn. I have argued for cultural economy, which means beginning to value humanity, because the greatest force to necessitate rule of the few, rule of the many over rule of the few over the many. If that's the correct linguistic arrangement. Rule of the few over the many. If we are to eradicate any rule whatsoever, which is the only way to rule is the many, the few to rule over the many. The few cannot rule over the many, cannot rule over the few. The system will collapse. Any system of rule is going to topple down. It's going to collapse and be destroyed. And that is, like I said, it's going to be suicidal even for the slaves. The slaves need masters now. Because see, we would rather have oppression and destruction the way it is, other than total catastrophe. The choice is opsonian. because either death or liberty. Either we get our liberty or we are going to die, and that is option choice. Option choice. We are going to have liberty or death. That's the situation. Liberty is going to come through enlightenment, through education, in my opinion. Through education, learning the value of humanity. If we can achieve that status, because you see, rule is not necessary. In principle, rule is not necessary. Humans ruling each other is a problem. See, if human beings rule over each other, that is a major problem. It is the problem. The problem, we are in trouble because somebody somewhere decided to create a system where a group of individuals have designed a system with which to rule the few, ruling over the many. And that is fundamentally the cancer. You see, the problem in society. I mean, until we resolve the issue of freedom, until we achieve freedom from oppression of the many by the few, until we achieve that status, there will never be peace. And the sooner we get peace, the better, to secure our future and to at least preserve our existence as a species. If we fail to do that in the next maybe 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years, humanity may go extinct. And then you may ask, why should we care about the future? Because if there is a future, because you may ask, we only live 100 years or even less, between 50 and 100 years. That's our lifespan. Why should we even bother about the future? Something happening 100 years, whether people exist or not, is irrelevant because we won't be there. The reason I believe in the future, even if our longevity is short now, because I believe that through science and technology, we can slow down or even stop to reverse aging. Which aging at the moment is it's the primary source of death. We die prematurely. Any death, according to scientists, and let me put it in that term, according to scientists, because there are researchers who are now working on aging. Scientists have discovered that people grow old, people age, because the body malfunctions. So it's a disease. Aging is a form of disease on the body. If there is no aging, then people are not going to grow old or die. So science have now started the process. Scientists, researchers have actually started a process of trying to see that if they can slow down aging and or possibly reverse even aging. If it is slowed down, it can be stopped. People stop aging when maybe they are 50 or even younger, or if they are 40, 30, you stop aging at 30. Stop aging at all, which means you don't grow old. But if we can reverse it also, if the technology can actually reverse aging from maybe 90, you get younger. And then, in theory, people are not going to die. And then there's also regenerative health. regenerative science, you call it science, or technology, or medicine, or health. Regeneration means if somebody shoots you in the head, your body heals in seconds. If I am correct about that, leave a comment below. If you know anything about regeneration. Regeneration, if somebody chops off your hand, it grows back within days or within, depends on the efficiency of the technology, of the treatment, of the medication. If somebody cuts off your hand or your head, it grows back sometimes maybe in seconds, in minutes, which means people don't die. If you die, you come back to life. That is regeneration. This is increasingly becoming a reality, although not yet in practice, but in terms of research and knowledge. So going forward, there's a likelihood that humanity will stop aging, will stop dying, and if they die, they can come back to life. Even after, if they have died for many years, they can be brought back to life. As a prospect, as it is now, or we can treat it as a form of fiction, if you like, but that is okay. But what I'm saying is more than fiction, because there are actually information that this is a possibility. Maybe in the future, maybe 1,000 to 5,000 years to come, if I am no longer around, if I'm dead now, maybe 1,000, 5,000, 100,000 years to come, a good scientist may bring me back to life. And that's why it matters to care about the future. Even though we only live 100 years or 50 years, even if we don't live long at all. So human life is actually intrinsically very valuable, and we need to value humanity, and the quality of our life is actually measured by the extent to which we experience peace. And peace is really achieved if we are free. We cannot only be free if we are actually independent, when we rule over our lives, other than somebody else ruling over us. And this is really important. We'll be talking about this going forward, and this applies anywhere in the world, whether you're in China or somewhere else. And this video was actually being recorded, but I actually touched the wrong button, so it actually stopped, because I'm not yet editing my video effectively. So if I make a mistake, I have to really figure out how to correct my mistake. Thank you for watching me this far. I'm talking about China, and also talk about China, illustrating China to discuss the cost of living crisis, which I shared in the other video. If you watch this, watch it with the other video, which stopped accidentally, so that we establish that the cost of living is one of the crises which we can look at. I've chosen to talk about the cost of living crisis to illustrate the problem of peace, or lack of peace. I was explaining that peace cannot be achieved if a group of individuals are ruling over the many, which is what's now happening, which is what will continue to happen. And rule is becoming more and more extremist. And the idea of rule is very challenging more and more because of politics. Politicians have developed, they have also evolved into expert communicators. The way politicians communicate, or even other people, even being political, ordinary people being political, the way they talk, I think democracy actually means freedom. Democracy is a system designed to cover up violence, because rule of any sort is actually violent, and it is, you could say, rule is a legalized form of criminality. If the law did not sanction the rule, it would automatically be a form of crime. So you could argue also that the law is designed to oppress slaves and to protect the oppressors, who are actually the ruling class. That's what the function of the law. The law doesn't bring freedom at all. It actually protects the rulers from the slaves. The law makes sure slaves know their place in life. See, the law is there to oppress slaves, who are actually the working class. And slavery features strongly in terms of industry, in which slaves are actually required to work to generate wealth for the master. That has created a system of capitalism, which is actually now operating globally. It's actually operating in China now, and that's why it's always slaves. Slaves are now referred to as citizens. Okay, citizens is false because masters are also citizens. So citizens is actually insignificant. It may help you in one way or other to stay in one country or another, but whichever country you live in, if you are not the ruler, then you are the slave. And that is always what happens. I mean, since there are some slaves who are treated fairer than other slaves. Some slaves are actually better off. They are preferred. I mean, they are more slaves than others. I don't know where that is the right way. I mean, if you are more slaves than others, meaning you suffer more. And if you are less of a slave than other slaves, you suffer less. Maybe that can be classes, the middle class. And every time you see a crisis of any sort, it is the slaves who suffer. Right now, slaves are the poor people. It's easier to describe the poor people. But the problem with poverty, it is covered up by slave masters. The masters and their allies and their think tanks, the people who court them, who actually protect them, the media, the main media, these are protectors of masters, the ruling class. And these people actually are now using brainwash techniques to make us believe in falsehood. That is probably a safe thing to do with the security process. Security process to buy time until enlightenment comes. I'm actually saying this because in as much as we are comfortable about violence, because we need violence to keep the ruling over. I mean, if you are actually a master, the only way you can maintain your status is to use violence and force. There cannot be consent. In a day, there will never, no human being will ever consent to being ruled over. So democracy is, it's like, democracy is like a cancer which you don't see, it's invisible cancer. I mean, it's the time of death which kills you quietly. It kills you softly. You are dead even if you are walking, because you don't know it, you don't see it coming. So people are so happy. People also believe they have rights because the law says people have rights. But when you begin to look for rights where there is said to be right, you will look and never find it. There's nothing like human rights. It doesn't exist in practice. And people are always saying, if police stop them, the first thing somebody is going to say to the police is that I have rights. Then the police normally don't answer that question, because the police are there to tell you what to do. And if you are a sensible person, the best thing for you to do is actually to obey the police. And the police is a form of militarism in the civil sense, because the opposite of military is actually civil. Civil means the police are operating a softer form of power. The police are actually, you can negotiate with the police. Police are more approachable because they're more civil. I don't know the meaning of civil. If it is, what would be the opposite of civil? Savagery, backwardness. I don't know. Leave a comment below if you know what the opposite of civil. If you say somebody is a civil person, so the police is a buffer between the military and the civil. So the civil rule actually sometimes refers to a soft power, including politics, including government, including civil service systems, the institution of the state. But they contain power, so they are still violent. Because you see, if power is operating in an estate of rule, where the few rule over the many, the purpose for that being, you cannot allow many people to occupy a position of rule, otherwise the system will collapse. As simple as that. There is no other way you can rule over people when you allow many people to occupy a position of rule. That's why it is so difficult to get promotion at work, because your boss is your ruler. He is your master. You are his slave. Now, the only way for you to be more promoted at work is for your boss to become slave and you become his master. So the system is rigged. System of capitalism is rigged. And I'm not picking on capitalism. Any system implemented will do the same thing. It doesn't matter how you're named, because systems of rule are the same. It is just apparent that capitalism is the one we are using now, is the most effective system of operating power, wealth, to access power. See, that's why wealth is a weapon of mass destruction from the point of view of slaves, but also of masters, because we are creating a world of violence where the masters and slaves will not survive. That is why I say we need to figure out how we're going to bring peace. We carry on implementing a system of violence, a system of rule of the many, of the few, rule of the many by the few. We continue doing that, we are going to go extinct. And you may not believe it, the cost of living crisis is a symptom of a system of rule known as capitalism. Either by design or coincidence, the system of capitalism concentrates power in the hands of the few, taking this power away from the many. And wealth is a vehicle, it's a channel of power. If you want to rule over the many, you have to really control power. For example, you take land away from the many and give it to the few. And that's the function of the government, to take land away from the population, from the many, and to give it to the few. So I fall short of describing the system as conspiratorial. I wouldn't want to be, it's tedious to talk of conspiracy, because there's nothing exciting about conspiracy. After all, normally it's reduced to conspiracy theory. And but you know, the writing is on the wall when it comes to the system of rule. Wealth is now the weapon of mass destruction, which is actually operated by the state under capitalism, taking wealth from the many, giving it to the few, is actually transferring power. Because you see, wealth is a channel through which power travels. So where wealth is, there is power. And if you keep wealth in the hands of the few, the many, they are going to have power and overthrow those who are. I mean, you can only use power for one thing in an estate of rule. So capitalism represents an estate of rule. If there is wealth in the hands of the many, they are going to use it instinctively to rule over somebody else. It's a collection. If you want to have power, you begin to use it to rule over other people. Imagine 90% of the population have power, with which they will go to use it to rule over one another. That is not going to happen, because you see, the practicality is not going to happen. That's why the system will collapse, society will be destroyed if many people access power. It's like, instead of giving lethal weapon, dangerous weapon in the hands of maybe 5% of the global population, you give it to 95% of the global population. 10%, 5% are going to destroy the world anyway, but it's going to take longer. It's like trying to save the world in a perverted way. Giving power to the few is saving the world in a perverted way, because ultimately the world will be destroyed anyway. Humanity will go extinct, but they last longer than if you give power into the hands of the many. It's going to, I mean, if 95% of people access power today, in maybe 100 years, the world will be destroyed. So we will go extinct within a very few. So it is actually survival strategy to take wealth away from the hand of the many and give it to the hand of the few. Lucky. I mean, they are lucky in their own right, but you see, they are not even lucky, because there is no peace for the wicked. And that means it is false economy now to maintain power in the hands of the few by using wealth as a mechanism. It is something, it's an, let's say, evil for now. But what we need to do is get out of that predicament and actually begin the process to get out of the idea of rule. You are not allowed to rule over other people, but you can't help yourself because you do not know how to live peacefully. So if you are given power, you're going to use it for violence. That's why culture is the answer. You use your law to impose your rule over the many. Use the rule of law to impose your will over other people, to rule over them using the law. And to achieve peace, you need to use, rather than using the law, you should use education. But you need a doctrine of culture. And this will mean valuing humanity. We need to learn how to value humanity. Because if you value humanity, you respect the person you value. And if you value somebody to respect them, you don't rule over them. Rule is a product of attitude. And that is good news. Because it's not necessary if we are culturally educated. The moment we are enlightened, we willingly stop ruling over other people. And that is, in my opinion, the only way to achieve peace. And that is why I've chosen to talk about the cost of living crisis. Because in as much as we focus on the cost of living crisis, we need to be mindful as to exactly what the cost of living crisis represents. It represents the cancer of capitalism. After the cost of living crisis, we are going to get another crisis. It doesn't matter where it comes from, there will always be a crisis where there is violence, where there is force, where there is evil. And evil means destroying humanity. That's the meaning of evil. It doesn't mean anything else. If you destroy life, which is what the system of rule does, that is, it destroys humanity. So it's a system of evil. Enlightenment is a medicine to cure the evil of barbarism, which is actually the essence of force and violence, which features as a form of rule. And capitalism is the instrument of doing that. When government talk of economic growth, they're talking of weaponizing capitalism. Growth is actually generating more wealth for the few and not for the many. Generate more wealth. In fact, it's like growth is like manufacturing weapon of mass destruction to give it to the super rich. Because we have weaponized wealth. That is the weapon of mass destruction. It destroys the poor. In the process, some rich people also die. Because when you fight, there is always collateral damage. So when you see war in Ukraine, you see war in the Middle East, those are symptoms. We haven't started yet to fight. Because see, the oppressed will always fight back. And the police and the law will always oppress them. You see, it's something called hard power and soft power. The law is a weapon of oppression. That's why the police are there to help the ruling class, to oppress the slave. They support the military. The military's primary function is actually to make sure the ruling class have the power they need to oppress slaves at an industrial scale. That is what globalization is about. Globalization is not going to bring peace at all. Globalization is going to accelerate the rate of our self-destruction, because we are going to self-destruct faster, because we are going to concentrate more and more power under globalization. We are going to concentrate more and more power in the hand of the few. Probably 2 or 3 people will rule the world, single-handed, by controlling all the resources of the world. Everybody else will be sent into concentration camps. It's happening now. You look at where you live, there are doors with locks and keys. You are voluntarily imprisoning yourself to protect yourself against people, because people that indirectly are also agents of death and destruction. Because you go onto the street, you find children with knives, and dangerous people are lurking around the corner on the streets of the world. Of every country, you will find criminals, and this is just the beginning. Because violence and catastrophe is on the rise. It appears to be better, because you see, people are so clever. They go to school, they learn how to be clever, including the capacity to conceal danger. You find somebody is walking on the street, they look really harmless. They're probably wearing a suit, and they could be carrying a knife, and they may be psychopaths. And there are more people with mental illness, anxiety, depression is on the increase, and people who are mentally disturbed, which is actually going to be a normal. I mean, mental illness is going to be normal. There are going to be hospitals. With technology and science, my expectation is that every home is going to have a clinic to deal with mental health. And mental health is going to be normal. Everybody is going to be mentally deranged, including the rulers. And that is going to be even more dangerous, because if you find rulers who are mentally ill, with so much wealth and so much power, the rate of their violence and their efficiency to use force and violence and destructiveness is going to be more effective even. You see it now in Israel, in Gaza. Head of states who fight the way you see in the Middle East are not sane. They are insane. And that is actually normal now. Insanity is being normalized. See in Ukraine. How can Putin be a normal person? How can Zelensky be a normal person? You see the way they are teaching their subjects, who are so brainwashed, they think they're citizens. They think they're citizens, but they are not. There is nothing like citizenship. Because you see, citizens are free. They don't pay taxes. If you still pay tax, you are not a citizen at all. Citizens don't pay taxes. They get everything free of charge. That's why every time you ask the government to increase the minimum wage, the government feels so insulted, because the government expects you to understand your status. Slaves don't get more money. They don't even get paid. And if you're working now, you don't get paid actually. You're only given money to survive. You see, first of all, the money you get paid, the low pay you experience, that low income you are paid, that low income actually is taxed. You pay income tax, you pay national insurance contribution, you pay pension. All these are taxations. You pay these things, then your money is reduced. Actually, nearly 50% of what you earn is taken away in taxation. Then, when you go to buy food and energy, you're taxed again, VAT, value added tax. Now, if you add value to a product, you make it a better product. Add value addition is actually you manufacture a product and actually improve the quality. Why do you tax it? Because slaves do not deserve rest, no peace for the wicked. Slaves are actually treated as wicked people. Masters may tax themselves, but you see, that's a mockery, because the amount of tax, if somebody is earning 5 million pounds per annum, even if you tax 50%, you still remain with 2.5 million. 2.5 million, and that is, compare that with somebody who earns 15,000 pounds per annum. You tax them. See, even if you don't tax them, they're already poor. See, they are struggling now with 15,000. You still tax them. And somebody who earns 15 million, you still tax them, but you tax 50% of 15 million. They still end up with 7 million. And so that's what you get, really. And you find that, the only way for society to achieve freedom is to stop rule. Humans should still stop ruling over. I mean, unless you are an alien, you will really try your best not to rule over people if you want peace, because only aliens do not really want peace. Any human being should want peace, even if it is unrealistic to ask for peace. So the roadmap to peace is actually cultural, it's educational, teaching respect for humanity. If we achieve that, if we achieve respect for ourselves, respect for other people, and that's why, without respect, you begin to learn why you're a slave. If you were with a wealthy person, they treat you worse than a dog. See? And unfortunately, many people don't experience power because many people don't access wealth. Some people are born in poverty, they die in poverty. And you pass on the baton of poverty from yourself to your children. It's generational. Poverty is generational. Wealth is also generational. When you inherit wealth from your parents, you remain rich. If you rule over people in a country, you rule over people in a country, and when you die, you pass the baton to your children, because your estate, your wealth will be passed on from you to your children, and you will use that wealth to rule over other slaves. See, you were born in wealth, you know your status, that you are a master, you see, and that is who you are, your identity. And you are trained from childhood how to treat a slave and how to interact with fellow masters. And the idea of rule, you are an expert. From childhood, you are trained from childhood to be a ruler. You're born to rule as you are. And this is actually the reality. This is what happens. This is why there's the cost of living crisis. There are other problems associated with society, which is to do with rule. And the day we stop ruling, that is when we achieve enlightenment. We become civil, and with civility through education and respecting people. Respecting people, if you respect somebody, you don't rule over them. You actually respect them. If you value them, you respect them. Somebody you respect, you don't rule over them. You actually don't keep them in poverty willfully. You allow crises like the cost of living to actually invade society. So that is the explanation, and appreciate people who have been watching my video, and subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment below. I'm actually looking at China, and I'm using China to illustrate the idea or the problem of the cost of living crisis, which is a symptom of a deeper problem of society, system of rule, caused by system of rule and the capitalism concentrating power, wealth, which actually convey power from the many to the few. The function of that power is to rule for the few, to rule over the many, to use it to rule over the many, to achieve security and safety for everyone, including the slaves. Slaves also survive because they are being ruled over. If masters are still ruling over the poor today, they will go extinct. The slaves will go extinct maybe in 100 years, because the chaos will be even worse. But you see, ultimately we are going to go extinct anyway under the system of rule. We need liberty, we need education, we need to learn our peace by valuing humanity, learn our cultural autonomy. If we focus on development, fine. Because development is going to be weaponized by violence, system of rule, which is a violence, which has never been intended to be peaceful. I mean, who would want to rule over anybody unless they are really terrorists? You see, there are two types of terrorism. One is legalized, another is not. You see, if you rule over somebody else, you are terrorist. But your terrorism is good because it's legalized. It also saves life. It saves the life of people you terrorize who are slaves. But in the process of terrorizing slaves, you terrorize yourself also. But it's better than not terrorizing at all, because at least you're doing something with your power, and you're protecting your wealth, you're protecting your estate. In the process, slaves are protected by coincidence. And that's why when technology comes, it is likely that slaves will be used like exploit for play. Or if you can't please your master in the age of knowledge and technology, when masters no longer need you to work to create wealth, medical doctors, military people will be robots or technology, computers and things, artificial intelligence. All these things will take over how to run society. The economy will come to an end, because if you produce technology which produces goods and services at no extra cost, you don't sell and buy, there will be no trade. Trade is selling and buying. There's no need to sell anything because they are produced at no extra cost. That is what I think. I may be wrong, but it's likely I'm going to be right when the time comes, maybe in the next 100 years. Human labor will not be needed, and therefore I don't know what your master is going to do with you. If you don't please your master, he's going to throw you into jail probably, or concentration camp, or just get rid of you. It's one way or the other, because they can't sell you anywhere unless there are aliens in outer spaces where you can be deported. Because there will be globalization. Globalization will actually, we are now under globalization. So the idea of immigration or national sovereignty is superficial. People say it because they have nothing else to say. Politicians talk about immigrants because they have nothing to say. We talk about things like Brexit because we are bored. If we are not bored, we shouldn't waste time on Brexit, we shouldn't waste time on immigration because we are becoming a globalized world. Uh, in the next 10, 20, 30 years, there will be no boundaries. Already, there are no boundaries within the European Union, and there will be no boundaries within the Americas, Africa, with the African Union. In Asia, there will be no, if you are an Asian, because that is the progress. And so sovereignty will stop. There will be a globalized world, one world, and the global village, world without borders, which is a good thing for masters and slaves alike. And the nonsense about immigration will stop. You can, if you have a bit of money, even if you are a slave, you have a bit of money, you can go on holiday. You see, a die another day. Why worry about? I mean, whether you're a slave or master, why bother? I mean, life is good for for lenders and borrowers. if you're in debt, well, if you are not in debt, well, you are responsible for your happiness. Even if you are actually under oppression, you're responsible for your happiness. Why bother? Let's not look at this material. We're about to close down. Looking at China. In 2020, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress (NPCSC) passed a national security law that authorized the Hong Kong government wide-ranging tools to crack down on dissent. From December 2019 to 2022, the COVID-19 pandemic led the government to enforce strict public health measures intended to completely eradicate the virus, a goal that was eventually abandoned after protests against the policy in 2022. We talk about rule around the world. We are seeing an example in China during COVID-19. In the UK, in America, lockdown is an example of rule. And the Prime Minister of Britain, Boris Johnson, said, this is not an instruction, this is not a request, it's an instruction, which means whether you like it or not. That is the true color of the state. And he used force. Nobody consented to that rule because he used force, and that is how it goes. Next time we meet, we are going to look at the geography of China. And thank you so much for being with me. Subscribe to this channel, support it, share with family and friends. Let's see how it goes. This is actually part 2. The second part, the first part will be indication, and I'm going to upload both. Thank you for supporting this program. See you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.